Live from Sydney, 7 News with Ann Sanders.
First at 4, good afternoon. Police are investigating a second case of vandalism at the site of a James Cook monument. The statue, which stands in Randwick, was the second of its kind to be defaced over the weekend. No Pride in Genocide was scrawled in black spray paint, which has now been removed by the council as police urge any witnesses to come forward. Meanwhile, Greens MP David Shoebridge has been called out for so far failing to punish a staffer at the centre of another vandalism charge. Brian Seymour is in Hyde Park. Brian, Shoebridge is feeling the heat from both sides of Parliament.
Yes, good afternoon, Anne. Usually this Greens MP is very keen to court the media, but today he went to ground after one of his staffers was charged with defacing this statue of Captain Cook at the weekend. Joanne Shee works part-time for David Shoebridge. She was granted bail last night after being charged with destroying or damaging property. It's alleged the 28-year-old and her accomplice, Charmaine Morrison-Mills, painted the words "No Pride in Genocide" and "Sovereignty Never Ceded" on the Cook statue early yesterday morning.
It's one thing to express your view with passion, another thing to break the law. We won't tolerate it, and if we do need to go further, we will. But I do want to stress that the existing penalties are quite severe as they are.
She works part-time for Mr Shoebridge on his Sniff Off campaign against the use of police sniffer dogs. Yesterday, another statue of Captain Cook was also defaced, this one at Randwick. And in Melbourne, statues of former Prime Ministers Tony Abbott and John Howard were also vandalised. Today, Mr Shoebridge was chairing a committee at Parliament before he dodged the media. In a statement, he told us the alleged incident occurred outside work hours, and as the matter is before the courts, he won't comment any further.
I have no idea why he hasn't come out and condemned his staff member. If it was my staff member, that staff member would no longer have a job.
So no condemnation today and no apology from Mr Shoebridge. As for the two accused, they are due back in court on July 2.
Thanks, Brian. Disgraced former state MP Milton Orkopoulos has been arrested and now charged with more than a dozen alleged sexual assault offences. He was arrested at Silverwater Jail this morning. Orkopoulos has already served more than 11 years for a string of child sex offences. He was granted parole in December but had that revoked in February. We'll have more from our reporter following this developing story a little later in this bulletin. New South Wales is being told to remain vigilant with another COVID case identified outside of hotel quarantine. Still, restrictions continue to ease. And as of today, the limit on attendees at funerals has been lifted. Chris Reason has been following this story. Chris, this change means a lot to so many people.
Yeah, Anne, good afternoon to you. Well, it was one of the most contentious and difficult restrictions placed on the community when it was announced back in March, limiting the numbers at funerals. But from today, effective immediately, those restrictions have been all but lifted, now only restricted to the 1 person per 4 square metre rule, and that is a development welcomed by so many. And from July 1st, of course, the same rule will apply for all venues, wedding centres, restaurants, homes, cinemas, parks, showgrounds, the list goes on, and they are talking about potentially easing the 4 square metre rule from August if the COVID transmission numbers remain low. It still means there are difficulties for certain venues and churches such as this one. This is St Joseph's Church, Catholic Church in Enfield. It would normally seat some 620 people, but under the 1 person per 4 square metre rules, it's down to about 120. Still, the industry is overjoyed that they're moving in the right direction, accepting more people into such an important time in people's lives.
We welcome the change. The funeral industry are relieved now that we can actually have more people in the churches and places of worship.
Whilst we're doing really well, incredibly well, it won't last if people relax.
Now also today, Anne, Woolworths has announced it has dropped all remaining restrictions on purchasing. You can now buy any item in any number. That includes antibacterial wipes, sanitiser and of course toilet paper. And with today's data from New South Wales Health showing 3 new cases, 2 acquired from overseas and 1 from the Illawarra from an unknown source, the Premier Gladys Berejiklian has completely rejected calls to cut the hotel quarantine duration from 2 weeks down to 1 for international business travellers, saying she simply wouldn't put the state at risk. Anne?
Thanks very much, Chris. Another Black Lives Matter protester is among the latest confirmed COVID-19 infections in Victoria. The state has reported 12 new cases over the past 24 hours, including a second positive case linked to last weekend's rally. The two cases are not thought to be related, nor are they believed to have been infectious at the time of the protest. The Prime Minister has unveiled plans to fast-track key infrastructure projects in a bid to pull Australia out of recession. Political reporter Taylor Aiken is live in Canberra. Hello, Taylor. He's confident this will boost jobs.
And it's hoped some 66,000 new jobs will be created by slashing approval times for high priority projects. The deregulation agreement between federal, state and territory governments seeks to cut red tape in order to get projects started as soon as possible. 15 projects right across the country have been deemed a priority, including the Western Sydney Airport and the Snowy 2.0 project in New South Wales. Also on the list, the Inland Rail Link from Melbourne to Brisbane, the Marinus Energy Link, South Australia's Olympic Dam extension and road, rail and iron ore projects in WA. The federal government will also commit an extra $1.5 billion towards smaller infrastructure projects.
It is expected that over $100 billion of economic activity has been lost this year, and that it will take us an estimated 2 years at least just to get back to the level we were at prior to the fall from COVID-19. And that's why we have a plan to lift that growth, not just for the next few months, just not for now, but the next 5 years.
And Taylor, the Prime Minister has issued a grim economic outlook.
Yes, Anne, warning that due to the coronavirus pandemic, Australia is facing record deficit both this year and next year. The Prime Minister saying record expenditure combined with a hit to revenue will see an extra cautious approach to government spending. He did, however, rule out hiking taxes as a way to restore the budget's bottom line. Anne.
All right, Taylor, thank you very much. There's been a scare at Sydney Airport this afternoon with hazmat crews called to the domestic terminal. A container being unloaded from a Qantas 737 broke with a suspicious substance spilling out. Officers wearing protective gear cleaned up the material and took it for analysis. They haven't yet been able to confirm what the substance is, but now say it's not believed to be dangerous. A Black Lives Matter demonstrator who carried an opposition protester to safety has revealed the truth behind the image that's gone viral around the world. Patrick Hutchinson says he knew nothing about the man he saved, but was worried he'd be killed if something wasn't done. Hugh Whitfield reports from London.
On a weekend of brutal violence across central London, this was a rare moment of sanity, a rare moment of humanity. It happened down at Waterloo Station, where some of those far-right, mainly white protesters came face-to-face with Black Lives Matter demonstrators, and there were ugly scenes. One of those white men was caught in a melee, and Patrick Hutchinson took it upon himself, he says, to save that man's life.
You know, I didn't see colour. I just saw a human being on the floor, possibly coming to his end. It was absolute mayhem around this man, and you couldn't even see where he was. If you're not there to stop it happening, then you're almost party to it just by being there and watching it. You know, the George Floyd incident that happened in America, if those 3 other officers had done what we did and stopped the man that murdered him, things would be very different.
Things have calmed down here in London now, but more than 100 people were arrested as a result of these protests that became riots and in some parts running battles between groups of demonstrators and police. Dozens of officers were injured.
The Sydney Harbour Bridge is getting a facelift with the now redundant toll booths to be removed. The cash collection points have been gathering dust since drivers switched to electronic tags more than a decade ago. Work to remove the booths will be carried out from this Sunday and will likely take 18 months. It's hoped the move will improve traffic flow and safety for the 160,000 drivers who pass across the bridge every day. David Brown joins us now for a look at the sunny Sydney day. Afternoon, Brownie.
Been an absolute cracker, and good afternoon to you. Yes, and it is a taste of things to come. In fact, let's have a look at current conditions. You'll notice it's sitting on 20 degrees, but the dry westerly wind is packing a little bit of bite. In fact, it feels like 15 degrees at the moment. But look, good old Bondi sparkled this afternoon. The water temperature is currently hovering around that 20-degree mark. Statewide, to the south, different story. Got this unstable westerly east stream that's producing, well, some showers about the southwest slopes and the southern ranges. Those showers have been falling as snow across the high country. Fine conditions elsewhere. In fact, we can look forward to another sunny day under a gentle westerly breeze. Low 20s are likely by mid-afternoon. At the moment, you'll notice it's sitting on 20 degrees in Cronulla, but it feels like 16 degrees in that westerly breeze. Cold high in the Blue Mountains. Katoomba, 11 degrees. Detailed local forecast, top of the hour.
We will see you then. Thank you. Still to come in Sydney's afternoon news on 7. Sacked at 9 a.m, the swift response to explosive allegations of corruption in the Labor Party. Second wave, Beijing orders schools and homes into lockdown. And an emotional reunion for the man who saved this little girl's life. You're watching 7's 4 p.m. Sydney News, and this is the view from Parramatta, where right now it's 20 degrees. A top New South Wales health official has told the Ruby Princess inquiry that his department was seriously under-resourced to cope with the pandemic back in March, and staff were being overworked. Robert Avadia is covering this inquiry. Rob, this was one of the more senior health bureaucrats to testify so far.
Good afternoon, Anne. Yes, the Ruby Princess inquiry has really seen quite the procession of public health officials who have been hauled before it, grilled over the decision-making process that allowed thousands of passengers to disembark in Sydney on March 19 before suspicious swabs had even been tested. Now, today, Sydney health official Mark Thurston was asked why passengers could not simply wait a further 9 hours on board until those test results were known. He had no answer. He said he didn't know. The professor told the inquiry his department was severely under-resourced to cope with the pandemic and that employees risked burning out.
I was concerned that my staff were already working very long hours. We hadn't surged staff at that point. And coronavirus emergency response, it wasn't just routine work for the public health unit and needed additional assistance.
Professor Thurston was also asked why the Ruby Princess was even allowed on its ill-fated voyage with what Commissioner Brett Walker SC called a woefully small number of COVID swabs available on board.
Didn't that call then for stern reminders of the implications it may have for a ship if they don't take the swabs?
Yes.
Is there some reason why that wasn't done?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Should it have been done?
It should have been done.
The official also agreed judging the risks on board the ship was flawed because it applied responses to known viruses like influenza, and that the more cautious approach needed to be taken with such little known about what was essentially a novel coronavirus. Anne.
Thanks, Rob. China is moving quickly to fight what appears to be a new wave of coronavirus. Schools are closing, with residential areas placed back into lockdown near the Beijing market linked to the latest surge in infections. Thousands lined up for testing as the country reported its highest daily total of confirmed cases in 2 months. Brazil remains deeply divided, with weekend rallies both opposing and showing support for the country's controversial leader. Anti-government protesters merged with Black Lives Matter activists, calling for the removal of President Jair Bolsonaro, while his supporters paraded under Brazilian flags. Social restrictions were ignored, even as the nation nears 1 million COVID-19 cases. Victims of the Grenfell Tower fire have been remembered 3 years on from the deadly blaze. A memorial service was held online as church bells rang out across London. A public inquiry into the fire, which killed 72 people, has been suspended due to the coronavirus lockdown. A US police officer has been given a new title 1 year after saving a little girl's life. Deputy William Kimbrough pulled over a speeding driver and found a frantic mum with her 12-day-old baby who wasn't breathing. He gave her CPR until paramedics arrived, and baby Riley made a full recovery. Since then, the officer has received a number of honours, but says the biggest was being asked to be the little girl's godfather.
My jaw just dropped, and I just had this look on my face, and I looked right at Riley, who was sitting on her grandmother's lap, and I just said, absolutely.
His wife was asked to be Riley's godmother. Next in 7's Afternoon News, Western Sydney's newest school assembling in quick time, so when will it welcome students? A meteor or even Martians? The story behind the green fireball captured over Australia, that's later. And in Sport with Mel, why the Bulldogs are frustrated with the NRL's strict biosecurity rules.
Tonight on 7 News with Mark Ferguson.
Record budget deficits, how the PM plans to turn it around, what sparked this scare at the airport, and the deals helping you save on your home loan.
Tonight on 7 News at 6.
Built off-site and assembled within weeks. That's how Sydney's newest school has been constructed. Tom Saker is at Jordan Springs. Tom, the government says it's well ahead of schedule.
That's right, and it is welcome relief for hundreds of young families here in Jordan Springs, with this $50 million primary school set to be open for the beginning of Term 3. Most of the school was built separately off-site and put together here in Jordan Springs in just a matter of weeks. It will accommodate 600 students and eventually have the capacity to hold 1,000 kids. 200 of those have already been enrolled, and they will begin their new learning experience halfway through the year.
Often when we build brand new schools, the construction can take up to 12 months. Here we're looking at a school that can come up in a matter of weeks.
It's one of 19 new or upgraded schools in northwest Sydney.
The school's at least 6 months ahead of schedule, and the learnings from constructing this site will obviously go into bringing forward some of the other timeframes we have on many of our other schools.
But it also happens to be situated very close to Sydney's school demountable capital in northwest Sydney, and critics fear it's not enough to cater for the growing demand, particularly for new suburbs like here in Jordan Springs.
Schools can be built in a matter of weeks. Why are there vacant school sites all over Western Sydney?
Nevertheless, the government says construction for schools has never been faster and investment never larger.
Time for sport now with Mel McLaughlin. Hello, Mel. The Bulldogs coach is fuming.
Hi, Ant. Yes, he is. A frustrated Dean Pay has questioned why he'll be without Aidan Tolman for up to 3 matches after the veteran tested negative for COVID-19. Tolman had the test as a precaution after a teacher at his child's school tested positive. Under the NRL's strict biosecurity rules, he now has to isolate away from teammates for 14 days. The Bulldogs play the Roosters at Bankwest Stadium tonight to wrap up round 5. The match that was rescheduled to tonight after the coronavirus scare. West Tigers winger Corey Thompson has made an immediate switch to the Gold Coast on a deal until the end of 2022. The Tigers will come up against one of the game's hottest young talents on Saturday afternoon against the Cowboys in Campbelltown. Teen speed machine Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow is just 1 game into his NRL career, but already has 2 nicknames.
And then O'Neill does the rest. Was it the hammer or the cheetah? Can you settle that debate?
Probably the hammer. I like the hammer better.
Tiger veteran Russell Packer has accepted a 2-game ban for a high tackle and a big blow for the Panthers, with utility forward Kirk Capewell to miss at least 10 weeks with a knee injury. Well, Blues recruit Adam Zampa says joining forces with Nathan Lyon in Shield cricket will boost his test prospects. Not satisfied with being a regular in Aussie limited overs teams, Zampa is determined to crack the Test 11.
If you're another spinner in the country, your best bet is to probably try and play with Nathan. So if I can form a relationship with him and play some Shield cricket with Nathan, it's probably the best way for me to get that baggy green.
The 28-year-old from Shell Harbour debuted for New South Wales in 2012 before moving to South Australia. A-League players are being tested for COVID-19 today ahead of a return to training later this week. The plan to restart the season on July 16 still hasn't been signed off by their broadcast partner. It is full steam ahead, though, in Spain, where empty stadiums aren't affecting the quality.
Tries to wriggle his way through, cleared out to Tony Cross. Oh, what a finish into the top corner.
Brazilian star Marcelo paid tribute to Black Lives Matter after scoring in Real Madrid's win over Eibar. World number one Ash Barty is the latest tennis star to express concerns over whether the US Open can be safely held in New York in August. While officials debate player safety, Novak Djokovic is hosting his own exhibitions. The world number one broke down at the event in Belgrade, saying it brought back childhood memories.
I try to be conscious of my upbringing and my childhood and how it all started for me.
Djokovic says he may skip the US Open if health protocols are too strict. And the PGA Tour's first event after 13 weeks in lockdown went to a playoff in Fort Worth, Texas, and Colin Morikawa just had to make this putt to extend it.
Jeepers creepers.
Oh, no.
That handed 27-year-old Daniel Berger the Charles Schwab Challenge, his third career title. Yeah, tense times, he wasn't too happy. And it's nice to see so much sport just slowly but surely coming back.
Very much so. Thank you, Mel.
Thanks.
This afternoon's top stories are next as a Labor minister is sacked following explosive corruption allegations, plus danger on our front line. The healthcare workers attacked on a night of violence. Arrested again, the former state MP at the centre of a new child sex investigation. And final moments, the confrontation that sparked America's latest deadly police shooting.
Live from Sydney, 7 News with Ann Sanders.
Welcome back. As restrictions continue to ease, the New South Wales Government is reminding the public to remain vigilant against COVID-19. Another new community transmitted case was identified today.
Do not let your guard down. The virus is very contagious. It's scarily contagious. Whilst we're doing really well, incredibly well, it won't last if people relax.
It comes as a limit on numbers at funerals has changed to the 1 person per 4 square metre rule, effective immediately. The Labor Party has been rocked by a branch stacking scandal that's claimed 1 minister and left 2 others under investigation. Adam Somyurek was ousted hours after foul-mouthed tirades were exposed in explosive secret videos and phone taps. Paul Dowsley has the details.
Disgraced and now former Victorian Minister Adam Somyurek is back home in Melbourne South East after a quick trip into the city this morning to see the Premier, a meeting that lasted just a few minutes. What happened in that room? Well, it depends who you believe. Premier Daniel Andrews insists he sacked Mr Somyurek from his position as Small Business Minister and as part of his government. Mr Somyurek says he in fact resigned, but the outcome is the same. Mr Somyurek is an outcast from the Labor Party after damning revelations that he oversaw corruption over years, branch stacking, using fake members. Plus, he was caught out using insulting, sexist and homophobic remarks about several colleagues, including Minister for Women Gabrielle Williams and the Premier, who this morning said all this was a bombshell to him. He said until last night he hadn't heard about any of this, despite it being widespread and long-standing. But Victoria's Attorney-General has now asked Victoria Police and Victoria's anti-corruption watchdog IBAC to investigate.
He was not afforded an opportunity to resign because he didn't deserve an opportunity to resign. He was sacked.
Despite acting quickly on Mr Somyurek, the Premier said other ALP staffers and 2 other ministers who were implicated in these rorts, Marlene Carews and Robin Scott, would keep their jobs while he awaits the outcome of those investigations. When asked why he didn't sack those 2 ministers as well, he said he accepted their assurances that they hadn't done anything wrong.
The State Treasurer is preparing to outline just how much of a hit the budget has taken from the coronavirus crisis, bushfires and drought. To get the state going again, special programs have been set up, and state political reporter Alex Hart has been given an exclusive first look.
And the state government announced a $2.3 billion package in March to help get the economy through the COVID-19 crisis. And a key part of that was a $60 million program to upgrade social housing and provide more accommodation for people in need. There was a major redevelopment plan for this site in Arncliffe near Sydney Airport, but that's now been put on hold so that the existing units, 142 of them, can be refurbished and used immediately by people on the public housing waiting list. Currently, only 13 of the units are occupied.
Out of adversity came a great idea. We had the money to fix it up. We've employed people, but there's going to be a legacy of having a safe place for a number of years for people to live.
Work has been underway here since the middle of last month, providing jobs for up to 60 people on site and for more support staff off-site. There is also money in this program to provide more social housing in regional Indigenous communities.
It helped me and my family, it helped a lot of other employees to keep us going.
The Treasurer says shovel-ready projects just like this one will be crucial to the state's economic recovery.
Not only are we providing people with work during this time, we're providing them with homes as well. And that's the great social outcome that can come from our stimulus support.
Tomorrow, the Treasurer will give his first economic update to Parliament since the coronavirus crisis began, outlining just how big the hit to the economy will be. And
thanks very much, Alex. Convicted pedophile and disgraced former Labor MP Milton Orkopoulos has been arrested in prison, charged with new historical sex abuse offences dating back to the 1990s. Evan Batten is in Belmont on the state's north coast for us. Good afternoon, Evan. The charges relate to two boys who were allegedly known to him.
And disturbing allegations, and you'd have to say the legal woes for Milton Orkopoulos are far from over. This morning he was taken from his cell, as you say, and charged with a string of fresh offences. He was only released from jail last December, and within weeks not only was he allegedly breaching his parole conditions, but two victims came forward, alleged victims I should say, and came forward to Lake Macquarie detectives with these disturbing allegations. They launched a strike force, and 6 months later today they have now pressed these charges against him. We have amongst those charges 5 counts of aggravated indecent assault, 5 counts of aggravated sexual assault, and 3 counts of child prostitution. News of these charges this morning no doubt will be a great relief for his alleged victims.
These matters are very delicate, and when a victim comes forward, we're very conscious of the trauma and distress the fact of coming forward may cause them. And what we have is very experienced detectives who worked with those victims on this journey to come through to Strikeforce Glenwarry and where we are today, where a person's been charged with 15 offences.
Now, Anne, will Milton Orkopoulos take an early guilty plea and possibly earn himself a 25% discount on his ultimate sentence, or is this matter set to head for yet another trial? We could find out as early as tomorrow when he fronts Newcastle Local Court. Anne?
Evan Batten reporting. Thank you very much, Evan. There are concerns Sydney health workers could face potentially fatal attacks as coronavirus restrictions ease. As Natasha Squarey reports, 2 paramedics had to lock themselves in their ambulance last night after being targeted by a man they'd gone to help.
The Health Services Union says it's absolutely disgusted that we've had 3 separate attacks on paramedics in one weekend, and it fears the violence will escalate over the coming months. Last night, paramedics were forced to call for urgent help here in Auburn after a man who flagged them down allegedly became aggro and threw a chair at them. The paramedics ran back to their ambulance and locked themselves inside, but police say the attacker kept going, attempting to vandalise the vehicle. He took off before officers arrived, but was picked up a few hundred metres away, and he was taken to Cumberland Hospital for a mental health check. A few hours later, a patient who was being transported to Royal North Shore Hospital allegedly turned on the health workers who were there to help. They had a fight in the back of the ambulance and the patient took off. On Friday night, 2 female paramedics ran for their lives in Greystanes after another patient allegedly threatened to kill.
The concern now is that someone is going to get injured. A paramedic will eventually be killed because they went to work, they tried to help people.
Now that Sydney is opening up, the union is urging people to support those who are there to help.
Thanks, Natasha. The New South Wales Government is considering tougher penalties for those caught defacing monuments after a second Captain Cook statue was targeted. The 110-year-old monument was spray-painted in Randwick in Sydney's east yesterday. It's since been cleaned, but New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian is considering tightening laws to prevent further attacks.
We know that it's just a minority of people that undertake this activity, but it's very un-Australian, it's disrespectful and it's wrong.
2 women were charged with vandalising a statue in Hyde Park on Saturday night. One of the women has been identified as a part-time staffer at the office of Greens MP David Shoebridge. Police body cam vision has been released showing the final moments before an African-American man was shot after resisting arrest in Atlanta. Meanwhile, this is what remains of the fast food restaurant where Rayshard Brooks was killed after it was torched by protesters in an angry response to the latest deadly shooting. US Bureau Chief Ashley Mullaney reports.
Good afternoon. Well, Rayshard Brooks' death has been officially ruled a homicide, with an autopsy report confirming he died from 2 gunshot wounds to the back. Prosecutors now poring over police body camera vision, which showed the final moments that Brooks interacted with police. The video taken just minutes before his death shows Rayshard Brooks cooperating with police. He'd been found asleep in his car blocking the drive-through of a fast food restaurant.
You had about 1.5 drinks. You don't remember what kind of drinks they were.
Police suspected he'd been drinking and driving. Mr. Brooks tells officers he'd had a few drinks, offering to leave his car behind and walk home. But as they try to handcuff him, the situation escalates. A scuffle on the ground and Mr. Brooks breaks free and runs. Security video from another angle shows the moment he points a stolen taser back at officers. In a split second, they fire back.
Oh!
With lethal force.
Both of your careers are definitely done because you just shot a man.
We counted 2 minutes and 16 seconds before they even checked his pulse. And people wonder why everyone's bad.
Atlanta's mayor was swift to act.
I do not believe that this was a justified use of deadly force.
The officer who fired the fatal shots was sacked, as was the chief of police. With the nation still raw over the murder of George Floyd, Mr. Brooks' death quickly sparked protests. The restaurant where he was killed set alight. Protests continuing into the night, with police acting quickly, arresting dozens of people blocking a major Atlanta highway. Prosecutors say the officer who pulled the trigger could face a charge of manslaughter or murder as early as next week.
A Melbourne trial is underway to determine if your genetic makeup could predict a heart attack. The Monash University study will look at whether a genetic variation could result in a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. It's hoped that by identifying the variation, people could receive early intervention medication. We're live to CommSec for the latest on your money next. Plus, Australia's burning night sky, a spectacular light show out of this world. The return of playtime, how the COVID lockdown has changed toy trends for kids. And it's 18 degrees in Bondi. Brownie will have our forecast soon. Workers at the Australian Reptile Park are being kept busy caring for their cutest resident. The 4-month-old Palmer wallaby was born in the park's breeding sanctuary but abandoned by his mum. The joey has been named Boody, which means heart in various Indigenous languages. Palmer wallabies are regarded as a vulnerable species, even being presumed extinct in the 1970s. Checking finance now with James Tower at CommSec. Hello, James. What's weighing heavily on the local share market today?
Yeah, very good afternoon to you. And we have seen the Aussie market falling quite sharply, down for a third session in a row. And basically, it's concerns over a second wave of COVID-19 sweeping the globe. We have seen new infection rates really spiking in countries like the US and also China of late. And that's really brought the market back somewhat. We have seen quite a strong rally over the last couple of months, leading the ASX 200 to actually lift about 30% or so. That was basically on optimism that we'd seen the worst of COVID-19, but due to these new infection rates, we have seen the market pull back today, down about 128 points or 2.2%. We saw all sectors in negative territory. Even the Aussie dollar was weaker today, down back below 68 US cents. And
James Tower from CommSec. Thank you very much, James. Mine workers in Western Australia were staring skywards in disbelief as a giant green fireball streaked through the sky last night. Experts have described the alien light show as an extraterrestrial treasure which could hold clues to the origins of life on Earth. Rob Scott has more.
For dozens of miners grinding out their long night shift, this cosmic spectacle certainly was a highlight. Shooting through the sky, giving off an intense green glow, it illuminated the clouds as it flew past.
Holy f***. Whoa! Holy f***.
It burned so bright and lasted so long, several workers were able to pull out their phones and capture what they were seeing.
What's that? It's an alien.
The footage has experts excited.
An awesome fireball, yeah.
They say this wasn't space junk, rather it was either a meteorite hurtling towards the Earth or a grazing fireball, which is a very bright meteor that enters Earth's atmosphere before being shot back out to space. They've been known to reach speeds of 40,000 kilometres an hour.
We don't think it's space debris. It just doesn't seem to be consistent with some of the other footage that we've seen of that debris burning up in the atmosphere, but it does seem to be consistent with that of a fireball.
Renee Sayers believes the fireball was probably about the size of a washing machine.
That's unreal, eh?
And the green glow suggests it was made largely of iron, which means if it did come crashing down somewhere in the Pilbara, finding it would be almost impossible because there's just so much iron in the rocks up in that region.
Thanks very much, Rob. Sydney 6pm News is coming up with Mark Ferguson. Hello, Mark. What are you working on in the newsroom?
Yeah, good afternoon. And coming up tonight, the disgraced former Labor MP Milton Orkopoulos has been arrested and charged over a string of historical child sex abuse claims. At 6, how much extra time he could be facing in prison. We have details about one of the women accused of vandalising a Captain Cook statue in Hyde Park, what her boss, Greens MP David Shoebridge, had to say about the incident, also the tough new laws planned as a deterrent. As the Prime Minister announced billions in infrastructure projects for the country, we have new information about just how much the corona crisis has cost our state. A new school is ready to take students in our west, the impressive effort from builders to get it assembled in just a few weeks. Plus, we have the country's lowest ever home loan rate, money has never been cheaper, the deal and what you need to know to refinance. And all that and plenty more, 7 News tonight at 6 o'clock.
Thanks a lot, Fergus. 4:48, so let's get a check on Sydney's traffic. One is changing the way families play and also our kids' taste in toys. As Samantha Brett reports, jigsaw puzzles have enjoyed a resurgence with a big revival also in outdoor toys, even as we move into the winter months.
Well, for many parents, lockdown meant spending hours and hours with the kids at home, playing with toys, games and, of course, doing puzzles. A new report out today reveals the top 5 most popular toys since COVID-19. Coming in first place, toys on a budget, such as Hot Wheels and Lego. Next, a resurgence in old school toys like the Rubik's Cube and Cabbage Patch dolls.
You know, parents have been a bit lost when it comes to games of today. It's all about online, and we had games. We had those Rubik's Cubes, those Cabbage Patch dolls, and we were outside kicking a ball. And I think it's been beautiful to bring that back, parents connecting with their kids, but from their childhood.
And there's only 3,000 of these Care Bears, so you'd better get in quick. Rounding out the top 5 Aussie favourites like Bluey and the Wiggles.
But anything that was educational in nature and anything that really kept kids entertained, along with the parents who played alongside them.
Books, yeah, blocks for this one.
And of course, there has been a huge demand for puzzles, with sales up 225% on last year.
Coming up next in 7's afternoon news, David Brown will be here with your latest weather forecast.
Getting big retailers to bid for your business. Getting Aussie consumers bargains better than online prices. Only on 7 News, 6 o'clock.
5 aspiring canine crime fighters have taken their first baby steps on the thin blue line. The 3-month-old German Shepherds look far from fierce as they begin training, though at least one has a bit of attitude.
We always say that what makes an average pet makes a really good police dog. So some of those traits that you look at and you think, that's a bit ordinary, they're great dogs for us.
It's hoped they'll be ready to pounce by the end of next year. David's back with the very latest forecast. Afternoon again, Brownie.
Yeah, afternoon, Anne. And German Shepherds, they make great pets as
well.
Sure do. Look, yeah, terrific dogs. Look, plenty of sunshine across our city today. Of course, the sun is now starting to set. In fact, the top temperature was 20.3 degrees. That happened, well, almost at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Statewide at the moment, the thing that stands out, got some scattered showers affecting the southwest slopes and the southern ranges. Albury at the moment sitting on 13 degrees. Quite fresh in Orange. In fact, it's only 8 degrees. Newcastle currently clear skies and 18 degrees. As we go to the satellite, This unstable westerly dominates the southern half of our state. As it approaches the Great Dividing Range, that airstream is physically lifted. That's what's producing the cloud, and of course we're getting a little bit of shower activity there as well. Further north, there's not enough moisture in the airstream to actually generate any significant rain, just a little bit of light cloud. As for the next 24 hours, we'll see a few more showers persisting through this part of the world. Of course, we'll see some snow falling in the high country as well. Not a lot, just a few flurries. Around the nation tomorrow, of course, as that front moves through, we'll bring some showers to Melbourne and around 18 degrees. Different story through northern parts, or in fact up towards the southeast corridor of Queensland, I should say. I was about to call Brisbane part of New South Wales. Imagine that. Who would have thought? 24 degrees. In Perth, clear skies and a top of around 22. For our city, remaining dry, lots of sunshine and around 21 degrees. I'm just wishing that border will open up soon. Let's move on to the 7-day outlook. There it is. Few showers likely on Wednesday. A much cooler day. Cloudy on Thursday. Sunny on Friday. Most of Saturday's looking good. Rain coming through Sunday. That's the latest weather. More at 6 a.m.
It'll happen, Brownie.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Thank you. And that's Sydney's 4 p.m. news for this Monday. Mark Ferguson will bring you 7 News at 6 o'clock. I'm Ann Sanders. Stay with 7 Now for The Chase Australia, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.